So yeah, first of all, thank you for taking the time out of your day to sit down with us.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for wearing the exact same outfit as me today.
Yeah, I got the memo.
I really appreciate it. It means, that I have a little bit more style than I thought I did.
Trendsetter.
But trendsetter and a very nice person as well. We're really excited to sit down with you. The concert series has been something that we're really passionate about doing. And I think that with your personality and your insight, I think you have a lot of value to give the audience and to give the industry. And so we just wanted to pick your brain.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about the beginning or the genesis of Hillary Rutherford Interiors. How did you get started? Where did you come from? How long have you been on your own?
Yeah, well, I'm from Fort Erie, Ontario, which is like 20 minutes from Niagara Falls. My now husband and I moved out 13 years ago to Calgary. So I started serving tables and then I was like, maybe it's time to do a career. So I looked up all the different programs and interior design was one of those. I like to do arts and crafts. So I was like, this sounds super cool. And then when I went into the program, I realized that is actually what I'm supposed to do because I love the creative side of things.
Yeah.
I am not like math and science, even though we do math in this.
Yeah.
So it just kind of fell into place. After school, I actually was a flooring rep for 7 years at CDL.
Okay.
So, which is actually really amazing. It wasn't like the sexiest of jobs that I thought coming out of school, but I learned so much and that's where I made a lot of connections. So because I made those connections, I was able to go off into interior design on my own full time. And that was 3 years ago.
Awesome.
So been in the industry for 10 years now.
And on your own for 3.
And on my own for 3.
So I really like that, you started your journey working on the rep side.
Yeah.
Because something that we see a lot of when we meet with interior designers or design firms, and I ask some of these questions, some of the feedback that they give for people who are interested in getting into the industry is that they should really try and get some of that more practical hands-on experience before just jumping into the firm world or starting their own thing. So that's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the lessons and like the key takeaways from that time in the trenches as a rep?
Respecting other people's time. So I understand on the rep side how much time it takes to help designers. So I'm very mindful, maybe almost to a fault of myself, because then I'm like, I'll just do it myself because I don't want to put other people out. But I'm very appreciative of other people's time because I understand what it takes on the back end. I know also the trades, like I would project manage my own trades. So I understand the challenges and the organization that they need from the designer or rep end in order for things to flow smoothly. And then I just understand the whole like ordering system and just all of the little product detail info that people need to execute the order efficiently. So when it comes to creating our design documents, I just make sure all of that information is there.
Awesome. And so having that kind of like operational level experience obviously lends itself to successful projects. Where have you gotten some of the lessons on the business side in terms of like how to structure your deposits, how to find clients, how to retain clients, how to structure your contracts and documentation? Has that been like on the fly? Did you take a course? Is that learning from a mentor? Like how about the business side?
A little bit of all of the above. So I think the really nice thing about being a rep is a lot of my clients were designers. So I got to see a lot of different designer processes and different documentation types.
Cool.
So I was able to kind of pick and choose kind of aspects that I could put in my own way. And then so I had a little bit of a base myself. And then I also would chat with other designers and they would help me and look at what I was doing and then give me some feedback over the years. And my documentation looks a lot different in year 3 than it did in year 1.
I imagine, yeah.
So it's just, and it's always going to evolve because we always want to be more and more efficient. So I would say just being privy to seeing that from other designers really set me up for success because I never worked for a design firm. So I pretty much just jumped head in, but that was really helpful.
And on that also makes me think of something that's kind of interesting. So now that you're on the other side and you have a number of different reps that you would be working with from various scopes of work, various trades, various suppliers, et cetera, what are some of the things that the successful reps or the most helpful reps do compared to some of the ones that are maybe not as helpful or successful in your eyes? And do you think that you're maybe a little bit more critical because you know what it takes and have a certain level of expectation?
Absolutely. And I would say, and this is something you're very good at, is answering people in a very timely manner. So the quicker that I can hear from my rep, the quicker I can get answers from my clients or move things along. And that was something when I was a rep that was really important to me because I didn't want anything hindering on my time. So that is something that I am not necessarily critical of, but that I'm appreciative of, because I also understand that you have a million other things going on. So that I really like. Also, it's important if we have a problem, like problems are going to happen. That's the nature of the beast. But how do you handle the situation?
Right.
I just want to know that my rep is going to back me up. And even when I was a rep, I'd rather maybe lose some money in the short term to make more money in the long term because my clients know that they can always come to me because I'm going to solve a problem. So I may be a little bit more hypercritical because I know what people can do,
Yeah.
but everyone is different. So I'm just more appreciative of people that go the extra little bit.
Got it. Um, and I know that you go that extra little bit for your clients. What type of clientele are you focused on attracting and working with? What types of projects are you taking on? Tell us about what Hillary Rutherford Interiors is working on today. What type of
Yeah.
clients? What type of projects?
So I would say I've been narrowing this down over the years. Because I'm in my first 3 years, I've said yes to pretty much everything. And now that we've been able to get as busy as we have been, I'm able to kind of pick and choose a little bit more what is more in line with what we're looking for. Um, Ideally, it's clients that haven't like they have a flair for design or they like design, they love artwork, but they don't know how to put it together. They don't have the time to put it together, but they do also have budgets for the most part that are going to allow for that. We can be savvy with, way too, but to really go the extra mile with design, it is people that are appreciative of design but don't have the time or understand how to put it together. So they let us kind of deal with that.
Okay.
Style wise, like my personal style is contemporary, whimsical with an edge. So
Okay.
I like to add in a little flair of that. That's not going to be for every client. So I'm open to different styles, but typically more on the contemporary side is probably more my strong suit.
And are those clients, whether they're willing to take risks or not, more in the residential sphere or more in the commercial sphere, a mix?
So yeah, mainly residential,
Okay.
but I have done a bit boutique commercial, which I really like. I like to create a vibe.
Yeah.
So, and that's where,
Vibey.
yeah, and that's where you incorporate all the five senses and you like really lean into each and every one of those. And you can do that more in a commercial space. I mean, you can do that in a residential space, but you can do it on a bit more of an extreme level on the average in a commercial space because people want an experience. And I do really enjoy doing that as well. So mainly residential, but a little bit of commercial.
And which one do you enjoy more?
Well, I would say
What type of project gets you the most excited?
honestly, probably the boutique commercial side of things where I can lean into an experience. Residential is also a little bit more emotional, and you have to really hone in on what clients are looking for and how they want to feel.
Okay.
Whereas when it's commercial, it's a bit less emotional. They're a bit less attached on the specifics. And a lot of times people are like, this is our brand, like this is what we like. Or sometimes people are like, they want help with the branding.
Right.
That's where I really like it because then I can really help just chat on all sides of it and
Yeah,
then
bring
lean
that
in.
creative energy to the brand. Yeah. So I love that you said emotion because I think that's something that in construction and interior design, people don't really understand just how emotional that journey is,
Yeah.
and how challenging that can be for both the client, the designer, and your trades and your reps because tensions run high, it's high stakes, it's expensive, and there's that emotional investment. So we know how challenging that can be. Tell us a little bit about how you kind of keep an even keel and calmer heads prevail throughout the entire design and construction process when you are dealing with something that's so emotional. What are some of the things that you do to ground yourself, to ground clients, and to kind of keep things moving in the right direction?
So the flooring world really prepared me for this because at the very beginning, I would get flustered when problems would happen. And the more and more I did it, I realized actually my job is problem solving. And you have to understand that you're going to deal with problems every day, but your job is to solve them. So what I let my clients know is I set the expectation from the beginning that this is an emotional roller coaster. It is not a linear process. Do not expect it to be. But when you hire people that are organized and they communicate, and when you follow the process, it's going to alleviate stress for everybody, including the trades, including the vendors. So it's all that pre-planning up front that allows the whole process to go smoothly throughout. Doesn't mean there's not problems.
Yeah.
And I help with the emotional support, and I tell my clients that in our very first discovery call of that is also part of my role is to manage that for you or with you.
That's awesome. I think a lot of people miss out on setting expectations at every level, whether it's a builder, a renovator, an interior designer, or a tradesperson or a rep. So I think that's a really smart strategy. What are some of the other challenges that come up on projects beyond it just, things not going perfectly or there being that kind of emotion tied to the project? What are some of the other challenges that you see kind of over and over and over?
I would say, sometimes you order something and there's a back order situation or, product issues, which is where having good relationships with your reps come in so that you know that they're in your corner to help rectify these things. I would say like sometimes indecisiveness with clients can be a bit of a challenge, but that's where we go really in depth at the very beginning to ask the right questions to make that process easier for the client, which I've learned over the years. And kind of every project seems to get better and better and more efficient and quicker. Um, I would say the best thing you can do is be organized. So if you have a schedule, if we can do a design package, complete that in its entirety, and then that goes out to tender versus starting a project when you're not done the design details. I think that becomes an issue because then trades don't have what they need. And then I think the process becomes a bit of a mess, and then you can't hit those deadlines.
Because you're building the plane while you're flying it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of the biggest disservice to the client, to the trades, really to the client, to the trades.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, because they're the ones that kind of get screwed over by that. So I think if you can just do that planning in the beginning, it's going to alleviate that.
I think that probably kind of answers my next question, which is, what are some of the massive successes or wins or the things that, you are doing inside your projects that over and over time again, you're like, yes, I knew we should have done it that way. So, having an expectation setting at the time of a discovery call and then having super clear documentation, really crisp communication. Like, what are some of those other things that, continue to make your process successful and that other people in the industry, whether they're a designer, a trade, a builder, whatever, could learn from and adapt?
I think it really is just a matter of having that pre-planning process dialed in, and don't stray from that. If you have a process, anytime, I'm sure you can relate to this, anytime you try to speed something up because someone needs it or you go outside of your process, there's always an issue
100%.
and you end up paying for it. So I think just stick to your guns. If a client comes and says, we need to do this really quickly, it's like, well, that's not our process and it's not going to help you. It's not going to help me. So I think just like sticking to the process, there's a reason for it.
Or even developing one, because there's a lot of people that are just doing stuff.
Right.
There's no documentation. There's no template. Maybe it lives in their head or.
Absolutely. It's not the fun part. It's the admin side, right?
100%,
And
yeah.
I am not admin heavy as a strong suit. I am more big picture thinker. I like the vibes. I like the fun. But I've delegated that to someone who's better than me.
Right.
Something I do, like I'm a bit ADHD. So I've learned that you have to body double. So if I need to go through, and I actually did this today. So I had a Zoom meeting with my girl, Morgan, who helps me with all things internal for the most part. And we had a meeting and we sat together because I know that for me to focus and actually get that work done, I need her there to hold me accountable to actually physically go through it. So that's been kind of my secret weapon in terms of getting the admin side done, because I know that she's there and we have to do it.
Right. And just so even understanding the way that you work as the principal in the company.
Yeah, I know where I fall short.
Yeah.
I'm like hypercritical of myself.
I think we all are.
Well, I know. And I think as an entrepreneur, like you're always trying to be the best version of yourself, or you're forced and pushed to be the best version of yourself, especially when you have a team.
Yeah.
Because,
and if you want to scale and be successful, you have no choice but to evolve.
Exactly. So yeah, and then you have to figure out those weak points of, okay, I'm not good at this, so I need to hire that out.
So I'm going to dovetail because that's a really good point. In that like constant evolution and that growth cycle, what are some of the resources, whether that's a book, a podcast, a networking group, a mentor? Like, what are some of, I'm sure it's a mix of all of them, but maybe if you could just think of 2 or 3 off the top of your head that like this was instrumental and helped me change my business or help me change the way I do things as an entrepreneur. What are some of those kind of resources that come top of mind for you?
Yeah, I do listen to podcasts, but the biggest thing for me is so this space that we're in is Lewis Duncan Hees, and I am working out of his office space. So he runs his own design firm, and he has been like instrumental for me in terms of just helping me in these blind spots because he's kind of seeing what I'm doing and overhearing, and he has more experience than I do. So he's been able to be like, okay, these are the mistakes I've made. Why don't you do this, implement this? And I've been here maybe 4 or 5 months, and I already feel like my business has done like a 180
Yeah.
because of that.
And so I've touched on this before in other interviews, but I'm acutely aware of how a single conversation, a single relationship, a single podcast, a book, or a mentor slash friend like you have in Lewis can change the business. Do you seek out those types of opportunities, or did this just fall into your lap through community? Like, how did you end up in this office?
I think a strong suit is I like to network. So Um, I met Lewis through Cosentino because we were on the Spain trip where we got to
Okay,
see the fabrication of
very
Decton
cool.
and all that, which is really cool. And I met a group of other really awesome designers from Calgary and Edmonton. And we also had a lot of conversations. So that's helpful because we all kind of speak the same language and have the same issues. So our relationship started there. And then we went to Mexico with Cosentino for CNEX, which was a really cool design conference. And it just strengthened our kind of bond there.
Good.
So that's so networking with trade events.
And so another really big value that we hold as a company and that I see in a lot of different businesses outside of our niche is that willingness and that love for networking and being immersed in the community. And so that's a perfect example where you didn't have that intention of finding a mentor or looking to transform your business. You just showed up for the community. You showed up to learn, to network, to share ideas, to make friends, and to kind of get some tidbits for your business, and ended up changing your entire trajectory in the way you do things.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's a really big testament to the importance of networking. And I think a lot of people, because it is very time intensive and it can be a little scary, especially if you're not extroverted, right? Like you're super shy. So if I find, I'm sure you struggle in those environments.
Yeah. Hate meeting new people.
Yeah, but a lot of people do, right?
No, for sure.
And so we're always thinking about ways of like strengthening the design and construction community. How do we bring more people into the fold? Do you have any ideas on what somebody who might not be as extroverted or is a little bit afraid of networking, how could they go about taking those steps if they're not comfortable going into a room by themselves or they don't know anybody?
I'd say like what I can say for myself is because I had these relationships with my reps, that's how I ended up getting in the Cosentino kind of realm where I was able to go to these. So maybe if you have that relationship with a rep because you're working with them, that's already formulated,
Yeah.
and you go to an event, have them maybe introduce you to people because that's what Barb from Cosentino did. It's like, hey, here, meet Lewis, meet Stephanie, whichever. So I think maybe that could be a way because I think it's scary going by yourself.
Mhm.
So at least your rep is going to be at this event. Chat with them, let them know, you're maybe on your own. But no, like if you go up to someone and talk to them, they're not gonna tell you to
they're
kick
there for the
rocks.
same reasons.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if they are, you don't really want to talk to them anyway.
Yeah, you don't want to be working with them. Yeah.
Totally. So if you just go and introduce yourself, it's so hard. It's painful to do at first, but it gets easier. Maybe a glass or two of champagne.
Maybe 3.
Yeah.
Or a glass of bourbon,
exactly.
depending on the time. Yeah. I think that that's actually a really good tidbit and piece of advice for trades as well, or reps, because if they're looking to strengthen their relationships with a designer or a design firm, inviting them to industry events where there's opportunity to provide value to them, independent of the product or service that rep or that trade is selling, And then on the flip side of that, as a designer, is reaching out to your trades and your reps and asking, is there anything upcoming that you think might be valuable for me to be exposed to or to learn or to network within? And so it's kind of that one hand washes the other because we're all in this together, right?
Yeah, you do have to take the initiative.
100%. What besides networking are you doing to build the business? Is it social media? Is it referrals? Like, what is kind of driving Hillary Rutherford Interiors' next 1, 3, 5 years of growth? And what does that growth look like for you? What do you want to see the company transform into or continue to strive towards?
Yeah, so social media has been a big one. As I've gotten busier, it's been harder to put my eggs in that basket. I do have a social media girl coming on because I realize I don't have the time to do it all really well. So that is a big one because I have control over what that looks like and what message I am sending out. So I love the idea of that. And I think we're very grateful to be able to do that. Social media is a blessing and a curse. So that is definitely an avenue. Referral has been huge. That's honestly where I've gotten the majority. I'd say social media has been 25% and referral has probably been 75%. But me working at CDL has been amazing for meeting contractors and builders and
Right.
clients.
Because you would have had some existing contacts before you got in.
Exactly. And I was working with a builder, which was kind of my bridge of getting out of doing that, and allowed me to move full time towards that. But I would say, yeah, those are the bigger things. I probably should do some SEO on my website to get myself out there. So that's something Lewis has recommended I do to get myself out there. And then in terms of, when I actually just looked back at my 1, 3, 5 year goals that I set last year, and my 5 year goal from last year was to have, a team of 8 to 10. I am kind of liking the idea of maybe a team of 3 to 5 max. I don't know that I want this like big machine because then I think I'm less involved in the creative.
Right.
And then I'm more just running a business, which I like the business side, but I love playing a part in the creative.
And being the arts and crafts.
Exactly. Which is funny because I don't like DIY.
Yeah.
So it's like an ironic part.
Arts and crafts with 100 different vendors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. And then in that kind of smaller team setting that's super tight, process driven with the creative flair, do you want to eventually see kind of 50% commercial, 50% residential? Like, what does that mix look like? What would that ideal state look like for you as you go forward?
You know, Yeah, and that's something that I kind of think about often, but I do like the idea of maybe there being a split. I think I just want the projects to be creatively driven, and for us to be able to have some of that creative ability to kind of do what we do best through understanding the brand and what the client needs.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
On that kind of topic of creative direction and projects being, under your creative purview, what are some of your influences in the design world? Is it architecture? Is it a specific interior designer? Like music? What kind of gives you creative inspiration?
Definitely other designers give a lot of creative inspo, and that's where Instagram is really awesome. So obviously, we love Kelly Wersler, love Ali Budd, Waddell Bichetti. They have like a really cool. I like people that let their freak flag fly. I think because I'm 3 years in, I haven't really honed in on my exact aesthetic that I'm known for because I'm testing the waters. I'm also learning, I'm experimenting. But I think watching people that do that, they give me permission to let that free flag fly. So it's helpful to see people just lean into their aesthetic that maybe a lot of people don't like, but then there's that small percentage that are obsessed with it. And that's kind of what I'm developing right now. Travel is also huge. It's just like understanding.
Very cool. Yeah.
Well, even arches, like arches came in and I didn't understand it. There was this fad and everyone's just throwing in arches. And I'm like, I don't understand the context. And then you go to Europe and then you understand why they did it. And it was just because it was the best structurally sound thing to do for a passageway. So it's helpful to understand the history of design and also what makes things timeless. And you can do that through travel.
What are some of the timeless elements?
anything that's a natural material for the most part is going to be timeless. So if you're doing marble or you're doing natural stone, even like travertine, like those types of things, hardwood, those things are timeless. Anything that has that organic look that's bringing the outside in. When you look at the outside color palette, that's always going to be around. It's something that's never not going to be something that we're going to see. So I think if you can take influence from that, that's something that will always be timeless.
Got it. And I think that's really interesting because we see a lot of buzzwords like biophilic design
Yeah.
coming up right now, and that connection between the indoors and the outdoors, and really it's literally just using organic materials.
Yeah. And COVID, it became really hot because we were stuck inside.
Right.
So we're like, how do we bring a piece of that inside? So we saw a rise of that in this modern organic, I think, because of COVID.
Hmm.
Mhm.
What are some of the more trendy fads or trends in the design world that you think are hot now and might not be here to stay or give you the ick?
Hmm. I would say the art just gave me the ick at first.
What?
I know. And I played with them because I'm like curious. But once I got some more context, that changed.
Okay.
So, but I just don't like the idea of doing something because everyone's doing it. Like, I need a reason and like a method to the madness of why. And then I'm cool with it. Um, so there's not, I'm trying to think of what gives me the ick. Like, I don't like this is more DIY stuff, but like peel and stick mosaics on backsplashes, like stuff like that. Granted, I understand if you're on a budget and you need to like make a vibe happen, that's an option. What I can say of things that I do like that are gonna stay is mixing vintage in with modern.
Okay.
So I think, is that something that I think is always going to be hot? Maybe not in a trend aspect, but I think it's always something that will be timeless because you're able to add character, and it's good for the environment too because you're recycling pieces and then you get really cool, unique one-off things. So that's something we've seen a lot more of. And I'm currently playing around a lot with that right now.
Oh, really? On what side? On the kind of more environmentally friendly, upcycled?
I'd love to say that is my driving force, but it's not. It's a bonus, which I should
Yeah.
probably shift that mentality. But I do like that that is a bonus of it. I just think it's really cool when you have unique pieces that aren't all from Urban Barn.
Yeah,
Like
right.
have one or two pieces, but then if you can go and find something that is pre-loved and you can use it in your own way, you can just find really interesting things and at a really good price point too.
And where are some of the places that you can find those interesting things, or is that a Hillary kept secret?
No, we don't gatekeep over here. So Facebook Marketplace, I find a lot of good stuff, and even just second hand is also like I have no problem with that. I'm trying to think.
Like, are you garage sailing on the weekend or?
No, there's a couple. Uniquities is one that's here. That's kind of like more antique, little bit older, rustic kind of vibe. But there, the Antique Mall, that is a really awesome place. So there is a bunch of different vendors within this one location. So
Where's
there's
that?
maybe like 50 of them. It's right across the street from Robinson's.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Off Blackfoot.
Yeah,
Oh, wild. I've
yeah,
never been in there.
it's awesome. You have to do one full look and then you have to do the second look. And that's when you find the
The
stuff.
treasures. Yeah.
Yeah, because you have to look like a topical layer and then you really kind of get in. So you have to be committed to the treasure hunt
Cool.
to find the things.
So that's the antiques. What about what are some modern design elements that you think are like punchy, sting? We've talked a little bit about like human centric lighting, voice
Mhm.
control, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what are some of those trends that you're seeing that you think are not going away that are super modern?
Well, I think just clean lines are always going to be in. Like, I love furniture with clean lines, or even like cabinetry with really clean lines. Um, Even like a flat slab cabinet, I personally think is just always going to be in. And then you can play with your furniture and your decorative elements. But I always love the side of contemporary because I think it has staying power. I think when you go really ornate, with things, although that suits some people and maybe, traditional arguably could always be in. But to me, I could see that coming in and coming out.
Gotcha. So the like base architectural structure is the, canvas, and then you're painting the picture with some of the design and finishing elements.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. If you were to give 3 pieces of advice to somebody that was in the design and construction community in terms of how they could be a better entrepreneur or how they could be a better business owner, what do you think those 3 would be?
Get a process, document it, stick to it.
Okay.
And then maybe quarterly go through and see how you can tighten up efficiencies.
Okay.
I think that's a really big one. Communicating is huge. Like if you're running a project, communicate with your clients, communicate with your trades, communicate with your vendors. Like staying on top of that is just going to grow the trust factor, and then you're going to get better referrals. So I think those are really important things to do. And even having like a software, whether it's Builder Trend or what, but having something that keeps all of that organized, I think is really important.
Awesome. I have 10 million other questions, but then we'll be here all afternoon. Is there anything that you might want to ask me?
Well, I'm kind of curious how you kind of started in this, because I think are
In
you
the
born and raised in
in
this
Calgary?
industry?
Yeah, in the industry, yeah. Yeah, so I grew up doing something similar to this basically from when I was a very wee lad.
Mm.
So my family had started a business in the 80s doing something similar called CKD Drapery, and they were in Builders Park. And that company ran from 85 till 97, 95, sorry. And then we moved to the Caribbean where my dad's from. And we were there for 2 years. And my grandfather has some businesses there, and we were going to go kind of modernize everything, and that didn't work out. We moved back in 97, and then we had a business again doing something similar called Cordell's Design or Cordell's Point of View, and that ran until 2010. And then there was some weirdness that happened with the partners, and that business ended up closing. And I had come out of school in 2011 and kind of spun my tires for a couple of years. And then in 2013, my dad and I were having lunch, and he's like, this industry better than anybody. Why don't you give it a shot? And here we are in year 11. That's kind of the short story.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we started as kind of a 2-product company, just carrying like Hunter Douglas for shading, and then doing a little bit of drapery. Now we have 17 different brands. I don't even know how many different fabric suppliers, wall covering, lighting control, speaker, data, TV, etc.
And what would be your biggest, I guess, recommendation to someone starting out in
the
this
trade
industry?
side? I would say literally the exact same 3 things as you. Maybe I would flip them in terms of importance. Maybe not actually. Number 1, and this is something we learned way too late and are now backfilling as quickly as like we can, is documenting those processes. Developing, documenting, and holding true to the process. I've said this in other interviews or in other conversations that like whether you're a 1-person operation or a 1,500 person operation, the quality of that document and the quality of that process or SOP being adhered to can't be overstated. And we learned that way too late. So I would agree on the process. I would agree on communication. Like you said, I think that's something that I hold myself to. And I think that the team holds themselves to a higher standard in terms of timeliness of communication with clients, with customers, with anybody that's involved in the business, including internally within the team, getting back to people. And then networking. I think that networking is used as a term for where people think that they're just building up their business, that they're going to get more sales or extracting value from other people, when really like networking is like a zero-sum game or co-reciprocating, like you're both providing value at the same time. And I think that just by being involved in the community, being willing to share, I love that you said you guys don't gatekeep, because a lot of people in our industry do. And I think that, something that I wish I had learned earlier was just to show up and share ideas and share information with competitors, with designers, with builders, what's going on in the industry, and get a pulse on things. That would probably be my big 3.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just to add to that too, Like, you don't have to know every answer, but you do have to know who to call. And
100%.
the more relationships you build and the more trust you have with people, the more likely you are to solve those problems quicker, more efficiently.
And I have this cheesy saying that I use all the time where a rising tide raises all ships.
Mm.
But it's so true, right? Like,
Yeah. There's enough work to go around too.
and it's extremely complex, high pressure, emotional industry. And so having support systems so you don't just feel like, oh my God, I have to figure this out all by myself. Knowing who to call and who you can lean on, even though they may not be the resource, they might direct you to the person that is the resource.
Yeah.
And so developing those networks and community is so important. And I think a lot of people don't do it. A lot of younger designers that we meet, ask me similar questions like, how should I get started? What can I do? And I had never really even thought of just saying like a go work as a rep. I'm always just like, get in the industry, but like specifically go be a tile rep, go do counters, go do paint, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be forever, but you'll learn so much and you'll develop community.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah.
What do you consider your biggest failure that you've been able to learn from?
Honestly, not asking you what your biggest failure was first. Oh, there's been so many. That could be a whole conversation on its own. I would say that being over trusting, and it's tough because it at the same time, like being trusting of clients to pay their bills or do the right thing, being trusting of clients to hold true to their end of the bargain in terms of communication or expectations or timelines. Being too trusting of the team to execute without supervision or without accountability, like on all fronts. But the thing that is also really confusing with that is that in being trusting and in being willing to delegate or to relinquish control is also where you'll see the most growth. So it's really difficult to say that is a failure, but it's more of like a lesson of finding that balance between trusting people to do what they say they will, and having to keep a close eye on them.
I understand that.
What's yours?
This is almost going to sound like obvious, but I didn't have a contract when I first started.
Aha, yes, paperwork.
So you really just have to protect yourself and your business. So I learned very early on that you need to have a contract and you need to specify certain things. And if someone doesn't want to sign a contract or has an issue, then it's a huge red flag and it's not someone you want to do business with anyway. So I think just protecting myself is something I learned very on, which I'm very grateful for.
And now we're in, I think, the like failure ping pong situation, because I just thought of another one, which, is the monitoring of critical business metrics. And I think especially with smaller companies is, they're really just looking at sales and they're not necessarily watching their margins and they're not necessarily watching receivables. And then as you get more support inside the business, it's easier to do those types of things. But that's something I think a lot of smaller businesses, solopreneurs, and smaller companies should be more aware of, and getting financially literate on balance sheet and cash flow statement and income statement, because at the end of the day, it's still a business, right? So I think that like a failure of respecting those sooner on in the process, I think we could have grown even quicker and been even more successful. And I think a lot of other businesses would, especially in our field, would benefit from that, because I meet a lot of trades. And there's some awesome resources out there, like Breakthrough Academy is one that they were just at the Builders and Brews. I don't know if you're at that event.
I was at that
Benji?
event, yeah.
So do you follow their podcast?
I don't, but
You should check it out. And they do like really, really, really great long form YouTube videos. They have a paid consultancy, but they provide a ton of value for free to the industry. And I think it's relevant to like contractors and designers. So,
well, and that's also where Lewis has been really helpful, because he had learned from that. And now he's telling me to make sure that I'm looking, closer at that and really kind of tightening that up. So that is something that, we're in a good spot, but can always be better. And having that strategy in place too, financially, and reviewing things quarterly is really important. And especially when you're creative, it's so easy to get wrapped up in the day to day creative or like the things that you want to do. And that's where that like body doubling
Yeah.
component has come in
You have to do the
handy
math
for
and the
me.
science, not just the arts and crafts.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's so
Yeah.
true. So, and I'd say like a little trick to do that would be setting aside, maybe it's every second Friday. Sometimes in a business too, it has to be a Saturday.
Right.
You know, like I would love to say balance is like a
I don't
thing.
know what that means.
I know. And it's like I would love to say that and it sounds great. Maybe one day I'll get there. But when you're really trying to get a business off the ground,
Yeah.
you have to put in the reps in order to, reap the rewards later on. So if it's a Saturday, because you can't do Monday to Friday on the internal business things, then that's what you have to do. But set aside a time monthly or biweekly that that is the time that you are dealing with XYZ internally so that you're not overlooking it and getting just stuck in the day-to-day deliverables.
The other thing that makes me think of is that a lot of people don't reach out for help or are aware of the resources that exist, and they're sometimes not have no cost.
Yeah.
Like there is a ton of information that's available. I can think of like two resources right now. So the BDC, like Business Development Canada Bank or Bank of Development Canada,
Yeah.
the BDC has, I don't even know how many free templates and PDFs on their website. And then CFIB, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, I think a membership is like $100 for the year. And same thing, there's hundreds of templates and articles and case studies on how to run a business, how to build a standard operating procedure, how to have an HR policy, how to have an income statement or cash flow or balance sheet review quarterly, monthly, weekly, whatever. So I think like the other thing is that, and I don't even know how, that's not really a failing, but I just wish that I was aware of how much support and resources there are for people in the design and construction community and for entrepreneurs in general on the internet today that people just don't know about. And,
Well, everyone thinks they need to reinvent the wheel.
right.
And I've been a sucker for that. And it's so funny because another thing I was going to say is trying to do everything myself. And I don't
Oh
know.
man, tell me about it.
And I don't know if that's like an ego driven thing or where that comes from.
I think it's in the middle.
You know what I mean?
I think some of it's an ego thing. You like, it's me.
Well, you want to prove yourself.
I'm gonna prove it to myself.
Yeah.
I can do this. And it's like you're in your mind, you're building that personal identity, that personal brand of like, I'm the tough entrepreneur, boss woman or boss man, boss person, and I can do this. So I think part of it's that like you're feeding that ego, you're feeding that wolf, right?
Yeah.
And then I think the other part of it is fear-based, where you're like, if I relinquish this control, or if I delegate, or if I pay somebody to do this for me, I won't get the same result, or they won't provide value at the same level, or I'll have to redo it. And, the only way that you can ever get there is by trying, learning, testing. You know what helps with delegation? Having a process.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And so I don't know what that is though, but I think it's in the middle.
Yeah. And I'd say that's a Mount Everest I'm up against right now is the delegating, even though, I do it for certain things. It's as I get busier, some of that creative I have to give away. I'm struggling to do that. So that's something I am currently learning right now. But it is those processes that constantly evolve. Yeah. And then being a mentor and a leader is a whole nother new job to take on aside from being a designer, being a business owner. So it's like teaching myself all these jobs.
Right? And so on that kind of like that vein, I think that what's really interesting or intriguing to me is I'm seeing the next generation of professionals in our space starting to really pick up speed and their business is starting to level up. Yourself, Lewis, Steph, there's a number of people that, are clients of ours, or just even if they don't work with us, I'm aware of them from the industry, that I'm seeing the work they're doing and the caliber of the clients they're working with. And it's exciting to see that like next generation coming up. And every time I talk to them, whether it's in a format like this or over drinks or at an event or whatever, and I ask some of these questions, something that I think is really interesting is that they all have one or two people that they can point to as like a mentor or somebody that, you know, they aspire to be or learned a lot from. And I think that tying this kind of back to the conversation around failure is that I think a lot of people fail, including me, to seek out that mentor early on in their career. And I think they wait till it's too late, not necessarily too late for them to be successful, but until they're already kind of like stressed out and up
In the
against
trenches.
in the trenches taking grenades.
Yeah.
And, you know, had they sought out that mentorship through a network early on in the game, they would have already known the person to call, like you said, when this situation happens.
Yeah.
And again, I don't like know how to communicate the importance of seeking out the network, finding a mentor early on in your career, and like building those resources before you need them.
It's so true. Like, and I've even seen, schooling nowadays, I think with the younger generation, they're seeing less value because there's so much information that we have access to online or, through different mediums. But for me, like having Lewis in my back pocket, I just, got access to a whole new Rolodex that I would have never had before. And because he's been through all of these things, granted, he's very kind to be able to be generous enough to bring me in on all of that. But I feel like I was able to jump 5 steps ahead. Like if I were still in my spare bedroom and I didn't have him, I would not nearly be where I am now in just 5 months.
Right.
So I am incredibly grateful for that. And I totally agree.
And I don't know how we're going to do it, but there has to be a way to start to not necessarily translate or communicate that like value, because that's invaluable.
Yeah.
But do something similar like that for the industry as a whole. And that's something that we're really interested in as a company, is bringing like-minded people together to start to build some of these resources, these assets, these relationships, these mentorships for the next generation, so that we can have those 3, 4, 5 step jumps forward and help push the entire industry forward. And, we're hoping you'll be a part of that in the future
It would
too.
be interesting.
Yeah.
If you did like a speed dating mentorship thing.
It's a great idea.
Like almost like if you have like your like experts or your people, and then you have like, let's say students and whatever.
Like rep side, design side,
exactly.
student side.
And
yeah.
then you have like, and then the
Sounds like
student
you're
side
organizing
gets to,
this
well,
for us.
This is the thing. I have all these ideas and not enough time to execute them. But I was like, you just got an image of like, that would be kind of interesting. But there's a lot of ways to do it. But yeah.
I'm going to steal
we're on
that
the same
idea.
page. No, but that's why I'm saying, because I think that's something that
I love it.
potentially you would.
Sweet. You're on the committee to organize that event with us.
Let's do it.
Okay. Awesome. We talk about like this next generation and where are we headed in the industry, and what is your business going to look like in 5 years? What's our business going to look like in 5 years? And that's all great. Assuming all those goals are achieved, and everything's going to work out, which I know it will. What is that legacy that you're hoping to leave with Hillary Rutherford Interiors? Or if you could, fly forward in time 20 years from now and say like, that was the mark I left on the city or on the industry or on the people that I worked with, like, what does that legacy mean to you?
I think the bigger message that is important to me that people don't understand, I think sometimes interior designers get maybe a bad rap in terms of people don't really understand what it is that we do. Like they think we're picking pillows, whatever. It's like, it can seem very surface level. It's anything but, in a sense, because psychology of interior design can affect your mental health. When your house is a mess, your head is a mess. Like you just feel that. So when you're really intentional about how you want to feel and you have really intentional design to support that, it can enhance the quality of your life. And that to me is something I take very seriously and is very important to me. And I don't think designers get enough credit for that aspect of things.
Love it. Bones to that. And I tell you why, because I don't think you know this, but if someone was to ask me the same question, and where like our ethos lies today as a company is in the connection from a product's perspective between controlling artificial light through shading, the sunlight through shading and artificial light through lighting control. Right. So that connection between artificial light and sunlight has a profound impact on your psychology, on your mood, and on your sleep cycle. So the fact that you reference like how important interior design is beyond just like the structure or the colors and the tonality, that it literally can affect your brain is massive. And I think that that's a very cool place to have a core value.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's important. I don't think it's something that people really think about.
No. Well, I do think about it every day.
Well, you're in the know. You're in the know.